Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our session. I see some of us have been hanging out for some time now. I'm going to quickly share my screen, and then I'm going to come off webcam. Not because I'm camera shy, but because I have lots of content to share with you today. So while I start sharing, I'm just gonna bring to your attention that I'm going to be sharing my entire screen. So you're going to be jumping around with me and when I say jumping around with me, I mean you're going to be going from different spaces from my PowerPoint presentation. You're going to be jumping to my web browser, and we're just going to be jumping around for the rest of the session. So I quickly just want to turn off my camera so that you have the best possible view. And I believe you'd be getting that view around about now. Okay. So once again, a very warm welcome and thank you for joining us for today's session on hybrid learning, a new model for the future of learning. And I think it's a new norm for all of us. And the reason why I chose this topic of all topics is I think we've gathered so much of content and information so far around workshops, webinars, live events, and what have you, um, on tools that are available to assist us as educators in delivering content. So I just want to tell you a little bit about myself before we dive right in. My name is Mohamed Sahib. I am a classroom success manager at Microsoft, and part of what I do on an everyday basis is similar training sessions to the one that we're going to be having today. Uh, but rather, our session is going to be a little bit different, right? We want to make it a bit more engaging. I want to introduce a few tools to you, but more than that, I want to stick to the title of our presentation or our content today, which is around hybrid teaching and learning. So if you do have any questions, we do have a chat facility that's available. If you have any burning questions that you might want me to take some time, after the presentation, you can pop that into the Q&A as well. So if you want to get social with us, and by all means you can get social, you can follow us on Twitter, Microsoft Edu, as well as hybrid learning, which is most probably the most trending hashtag at the moment. So what you'll get in return is you'll stay up to date with all of the latest features that are released, most of what we're going to be covering today as well. So let's get into today's agenda. Like I earlier mentioned, we're going to be discussing, hybrid learning. It is a new model for the future of learning, and for majority of us, it's an interest that we invest a lot of time into now more than ever. And I've seen the peak, from the very first lockdown of the pandemic up until date. It's a trend that we seem to identify, and that trend is as follows. You see a lot of educators, schools, districts, provinces, they get into riding the wave, right? Now we're on the third wave. You see that spike again. So a lot of interest comes into, what sorts of tools do we have available, or what tools can we adopt in order to enhance our teaching and learning methods. And this is what I want to discuss with you today. So we hear a lot of keywords and buzzwords floating around, remote teaching and learning, hybrid teaching and learning, blended learning experiences, and so forth. But today solely, I want to discuss hybrid learning. So we learn about the different types of remote and hybrid learning models that they are available. We'll examine the five elements of hybrid learning, and we'll explore best practices for implementing the five elements into a hybrid learning environment. So, like I earlier mentioned, if you have any questions, just pop it in, and feel free to make this as interactive as possible. So, I'm not going to delay any further. I do believe we have an hour today, and the reason why I'm sharing my entire screen once again is I don't want to bore you with a PowerPoint presentation. I want to dive into what Microsoft Teams really is all about. But first, let's understand why would we use it, when would we use it, and most of all, how would we get started with Microsoft Teams? Because now that we have all this content and we've consumed all of this content during the workshop itself, we want to be able to apply it, even if it's at school, um, as a face-to-face model, or whether we doing it as a hybrid model. We want to be as effective as we are during our classroom time, face-to-face, which we miss. I believe so. So I want to get right into it. And like I said, there is a chat window. You can feel free to pop in a few. I will be asking a few questions now and then, so you can feel free. I'd like you to give me, or rather give us some sort of information. How would you describe hybrid learning? Just a question. Um, at this moment in time, what's your definition of hybrid learning, and how would you describe it? Feel free to put it in the chat if you want to. If you're feeling a bit shy at the moment, or if you're not sure um, how you describe hybrid learning, it's perfectly fine. But it's also good to get some feedback from yourself. Okay, so moving along. Um, for those of you that have been sharing, if you have, thanks for sharing your inputs on the chat, and I'll take a look at that shortly. But it's always great to read explanations and obviously have this interactivity when we having this sort of session, because we're unable to be in a face-to-face environment. So always just having some sort of inputs makes me understand what to focus more on. So on the screen, you'd see we have remote and hybrid learning models, and I earlier discussed we're gonna be going into further detail of the five elements of hybrid learning. But when it comes to the remote and hybrid learning models, these are the models that we look at. Partial opening as the first one. Partial opening. Some schools are allowing only specific students to return to school. Groups are eligible for returning to school include, the youngest students, which were selected at first, either students with special needs, because they are reliant on the hardware that we have on school in order to learn, right? Or students who don't have access to connected devices. And this is a real struggle that we go through. There's so much of technology that's obviously implemented, but sometimes we tend to forget, accessibility is one of the major issues. And how do we overcome that? And I'll speak to you about a few models that I've had the privilege to work on, just to enhance that, or rather bridge that gap of accessibility. For some of us, we take granted that we have access to either fiber or really fast internet speeds, but in some areas it's really compromised. And what happens to the students once we provide this content to them? How are they consuming the content? When they're back home, or they're unable to have sufficient data to consume this content. So that's one of the main focus areas, and I can share some best practice with you on that. Just talking a little bit more about partial opening, we understand that a select group of students were able to be on campus or at school at a specific time, and the remainder of the students will continue their education in a virtual environment. And what we discovered here on partial opening is that those students who were on a rotational basis, or rather their days at home, they were unable to be productive. And the main reason behind that was either the student didn't have a device to use, number one, or the student didn't have access to data. Okay, so we talk about synchronous and separated. Some educational institutes are conducting face to face and online instruction at the same time. Okay, and I see this evidence as I work with lots of schools on a daily basis, but more districts and provinces. But we see this happening, right? Face to face lessons are conducted and online instruction at the same time. So some students are in person while others are joining the same class remotely. So the student has more of an option, now more than ever, from a safety aspect or precautionary aspect. The students or the parent can make a decision for the student to say, okay, we're monitoring numbers and this week doesn't seem too good, so this week you'll stay at home. But remember, these are the students that actually have access to data or the internet and a device. Okay. Last but not least, we speak about rotational, which I mentioned very briefly, but other schools are rotating students on and off campus throughout the week. So, we have our Monday, Wednesday, Friday students, following week, Tuesday, Thursday. And this is to ensure, smaller classes. Students attend classes on or rather at school on specific days while their peers work remotely, asynchronously on the same days. On other days, the attendance flips and it's basically on a rotational basis. Okay, so these are the three learning models, and we speak a lot about synchronous and asynchronous learning. So I put up a slide in addition just to remind us, synchronous and asynchronous, just differentiating between the two. Um, Synchronous learning, students learn at the same time. Okay, so communication happens in real time, like even though today we're on a virtual platform, but it's synchronous because communication is happening on a real time basis. I'm speaking, you're able to hear me, possibly more engaging and effective. When we talk about being more engaging and effective, is it a one-way stream? Are we able to gain back some sort of feedback from the students, and so forth? So synchronous learning allows for instant feedback and clarification. And a few examples would be a video conference like today, hosting a live chat. You do have access to that and live stream videos as well. Okay, when it comes to asynchronous, students learn at different times. So the communication is not live. And I'll give you an example of this. We speak a lot about um, accessing on demand recordings, and what do we mean by that? If a student wasn't able to be in my class today, uh, I have the ability as an educator to provide a recording to a student, but that communication is not live because the chat has ended already. Okay, so the class has ended. All the students able to do is consume that video, which was obviously recorded, a few hours ago, a few days ago. So it's possibly more convenient and flexible because you're able to distribute and students are able to consume self-paced. Okay, and last but not least, on asynchronous, it allows students to work in their own pace, and we refer to this as self-paced. Okay, example of asynchronous could be email, screen cast, flip grids. I've seen a few examples of worksheets being printed out, guides being printed out for students for the week, okay, or for the upcoming week. And what this tells us is it's asynchronous, all right, because we're providing students with the task or multiple tasks to be completed in a specific duration of time, which the student has the ability to pace themselves and complete these tasks. So just wanted to iron that out because we're going to be using the terms synchronous and asynchronous. So just as a refresher, I thought it'd be pretty cool to just add in this slide. Okay, so the hybrid learning model itself, in a nutshell, okay, the hybrid learning environment, it's basically a mix of all of these models that we see, right? And the different models, synchronous, asynchronous, which was discussed in detail in the previous slide, face-to-face and virtual. So these are the words and the buzzwords that we hear flying around now more than ever, right? This hybrid approach to learning builds on the successes of these models to intentionally create the learner centered experience. And this is what we know it as, personalized learning. engaging learning, and so forth. So I don't want to waste any more time. What I want to do is just iron out on the five elements of hybrid learning, and then I want to just go straight into our demo to show you exactly what it's like, or a day in the life of a hybrid teacher, just to show you what's available and so forth. But first things first, let's discuss the five elements of hybrid learning. Okay, educational systems moving to a hybrid learning environment will need to focus on specific elements to ensure that the instructors have what they need to be successful. They need to be fully equipped. Okay, so the five elements of hybrid learning are the ones that you see on the screen. So if you look at learning environment, okay, optimizing both the physical and the virtual space for your students, a class community, fostering relationships with the students to encourage a connection or some sort of connection, right? When it comes to class community, building this community for the class with a select group of students. And then we have lesson design. This is evaluating basically the core concepts in the curricula. This determines what is most essential, and designing instructional methods, materials, assessments that can be personalized to meet individual students' needs. When we talk about assessments, we have different types of assessments. Okay, so I will show you what Microsoft Teams has when it comes to lesson design and assessments a little bit further on in today's demo. Okay, number four, we have engagement and interactivity, creating synchronous and asynchronous experiences that utilize a variety of strategies to ensure that students are engaged and active participants. I have a few questions, but we'd leave that for the end, right? When it comes to engagement and activity, I just want you to put yourself in a situation of, the time where you had to teach remotely and your students had to learn remotely. What sort of engagement tools or strategies did you implement for number four? Okay. And you can have this parked at the back of your mind, but ideally I'm just curious to know when it came to engagement and interactivity, because if you put ourselves into back into the classroom in a face-to-face method, right, we have different forms of being engaging and interactive that sometimes we don't even realize how engaging and interactive we are up until we pulled out of that classroom and put in a remote environment. So when it comes to engagement, getting feedback, having the ability to have a student raise their hand and ask a question. We can't expect the same student that's sitting in a face-to-face class to raise their hand and have that confidence to ask me a question, to have that same confidence in a virtual environment. So what sort of tools do we use to monitor, at the same time not monitor or analyze the engagement activity or engagement and interactivity, but how do we ensure that all students are participating? Because what we find is, and what we find having often is that from a educator perspective, we worry about students minimizing our screens while in class and hopping onto either a quick game or a social media platform. But at the end of the day, there is absolutely no way that we can lock a student's screen in for a specific period of time. It comes down to our content delivered, or rather delivering our content to be engaging and interactive instead. So one way stream is not a preferred method for me. I want to be able to assist you with being more engaging and interactive during an online class session. And remember, when it comes to hybrid, um, we need to draw that difference between remote teaching and learning and hybrid teaching and learning. And then that's the whole aim of today's session, right? Enough on number four. I'm going to hop on to number five, which is last but not least, assessments and feedback. Designing formative and summative assessments that continually evaluate understanding and provide feedback to promote the student growth. And I'll give you a quick example. Now, after every single session, uh, we have a simple tool that's integrated into every single online session, which enables us to give students a quick 3 minutes or 2 minutes, not test, but evaluation or feedback of the understanding of the lesson. So this can be integrated, whether a student's using a touchscreen device or a traditional laptop, perhaps, or computer. It enables the student to, have a multiple choice and give you some sort of feedback as to their understanding of your online session. And that gives us it has great impact because we can change the way we teach online by enhancing the process with regards to adding additional applications to be more engaging and interactive, of course. So I think this by far is my most important slide that I have to share with you. I hope that the examples that I've given are sufficient enough for us to understand these five different elements of hybrid learning. I did plan on being a little bit more interactive, uh, but when it comes to being interactive, I usually get taken away with time. But just to give you an example, what I had planned was which elements are you most excited about, and these aren't things that you necessarily need to discuss right now. But if you want to pop it in the chat, it would be nice. Which elements are you most excited about developing for your hybrid learning environment? So, out of these five elements, which one are you excited about? Okay, or which one are you wanting to develop or get into? In the chat window, you can enter a number of the elements that you're most excited about exploring. For example, number one being learning environment, two, class community, three, lesson and design. I can tell you now, you can probably make that judgment for me, but I'm most excited about engagement and interactivity because there's tons of tools to provide that as well. Not to say there's not enough tools to provide one, two, and three, but I think engaging or engagement and interactivity is one of my core focuses. Okay, assessment and feedback. You don't need to include an explanation as to why you're most excited about that, but just give me an indication as to which one of these are you excited to explore or start developing in. This will give me some indication as to what to dive into in my live demo. Okay, so bimodal learning environment. I'm not going to spend too much of time on this, but just to take you through it, right? To create a student-centered hybrid learning environment, educational institutes as a whole must create physical and virtual learning spaces that are conducive to dynamic interactions with students who are both in person and working remotely. I know by now educators are comfortable in their physical learning environment. We have worked to optimize our spaces, right? Foster the communication and the collaboration and promote efficient workflow. When shifting to the hybrid learning, you have to decide how you create a similar workflow and learning space in the virtual world, right? For some of us, it sounds pretty scary because we're used to having our own space inside of our classroom, okay? So when it comes to in-person versus virtual, I've managed to put a few slides on something that could be a little bit helpful, right? And in Microsoft Teams, and I spoke very briefly about that, but don't stress if you haven't been on Teams before, because I'm going to spend a few minutes just showing you that if you do have it available, how do you go about accessing Microsoft Teams? But um, in Microsoft Teams, you can of course you can have and be this digital hub for your hybrid learning environment. You can post files, class notebooks, assignments, grades, um, all can be incorporated to create a single workflow that's similar to the one in your classroom. So here, for example, are two areas of in-person interactions that can be moved onto a virtual platform in Microsoft Teams, right? Or with Microsoft Teams. Channels, for one, it allows you to create learning centers to organize units of study. So while the file tabs allows you to share resources and instructions in the class materials folders, It provides a place for your students to collaborate on PowerPoint, Excel, Word documents, and so forth. Okay. So this is what I want to get into in a little bit more detail when we exploring. I'm just going to skip a few because I'm a little bit excited to go into the live demo with you. Here's another example. Okay. We talk about one of the best ways to promote online communication and collaboration. So this is to use the post tab in your class team. You and your students can have conversations related to school, as well as special channels where you and your students can socialize or get to know one another. But when we talk about socializing, we get a lot of red flags from specific schools, specific groups of students, and so forth. What I want you to understand that is when you're in a traditional class, you are the educator and you're fully responsible for managing your class. On an online environment or online platform, shall I say, like Microsoft Teams to be more specific, you're in the same situation with the same amount of management and privileges. It's just a matter of, getting a hold over it and understanding, how do I manage my students in a more safe environment, because as a classroom success manager, um, onboarding a lot of schools onto Microsoft Teams, especially during the pandemic, I had questions coming in as, students are managing to join the class before the educator, they're sharing their screen, they're showing their online games and how far they've gone in that. Look, this is all well thought of. So as an educator, I can have all of my students, and I'll give you an example, right? Um, when I was in school, I used to sit or rather stand outside of the class and wait for the educator to enter the class, because we used to move around from educator to educator. Wait for the educator to land to the class before we enter the classroom. And we can have that exact same process. It's called a lobby, right? Students aren't able to enter your virtual class up until you, as an educator, are there. Whether you're 5 minutes late or 5 minutes early, 10 minutes late, 10 minutes early, you have the full control of allowing all students in at the same time. I also had a question after I've given, or rather provided the solution. I had the question that came up to say, no, Mohammed, do students have the ability to chat to one another or interact with one another inside of the lobby? And there's two answers here, right? Number one, it clearly gives me an indication that you don't want to have the students in an unsupervised virtual space, which is understandable. And number two, students aren't able to do anything but wait up until the educator admits them into the actual classroom. But I'll show you how that works in detail. What we focus on when it comes to Microsoft Teams is collaboration. So students are able to collaborate with other students, but in a safe environment, in a managed and supervised environment as well. Okay, so you can also use chats to check in on other students, and a big role, social emotional needs is a big component here, right? You can use reflect extension. So let me give you an example. Okay, reflect extensions in Teams. So you can pop in to a student or to your entire class, how did you feel about this week? And these are things that affect students. We might not know, because students might not raise their hand and say, sir or ma'am or Mr. Mohammed, this week I'm not feeling very or I'm feeling a little bit uneasy because um, I've saw on the news that we picked up to 13,000 cases, and it's really getting to me because families starting to get affected, or whatever the case might be. A student won't just pick their hand up on a virtual platform and voice this opinion. So we have tools like Reflect extension in Microsoft Teams to, post to a student, how do you feel about this week? Or maybe the workload was too much, or, what can I do to improve? And this gives me an indication as an educator or form educator of a specific subject that, my students or my class morale is very low. What can I do to improve that? Let me just try and put in, a quick Kahoots quiz to bring them back up to speed or to motivate them and so forth. So these are the type of tools that are available on Microsoft Teams. And as you can see, it's really student centered. It's really around the experience more of the student than anything else. And when it comes to social and emotional well-being, it's a core focus as well. So just want to show you another quick school day app for teams, right? Take the next 5 minutes to think of ways you can foster connection with amongst your students. But we don't have time, right, at this moment because I want to get into the demo, but you can park that thought as well. Consider the questions on the slide as you reflect or whatever it might be. What I want to get into is school day itself. Okay. This is basically a what we call third party app that you can add on to Microsoft Teams. And there's lots and lots of apps like this that's available to be a little bit more engaging when it comes to your students themselves. Okay. I'm going to stop here and I'm going to take you through a live demo on most of what we discussed. But I see I have a few minutes as well in hand. So I just want to stop and check whether there are any questions very quickly. 4 and 5. Thanks for being so interactive. Can we choose all of them? That's something I'd ask. So yeah, that's great. Okay. 1 and 3. Do you mean interactive lessons online? I do. Okay. So the hybrid model itself could be around, interactive lessons itself. So I see that you guys are being extremely interactive. I really don't want to go on with a PowerPoint presentation. I think we're all pretty excited to see, what is Microsoft Teams and how can it assist me with hybrid teaching and learning with the hybrid model itself, right? So before I go into sharing the live demo, if you can just give me an indication exactly how you typed in, 1, 2, and 3, selecting the models. Let's talk about Microsoft Teams, right? Have you used Microsoft Teams before? Just give me a yes or a no, and then I'll tell you, how about going, or how do you know whether your school or your institute is eligible to a license? Okay, so that's what we can talk about for about 3 or 4 minutes, and then I'll show you how to onboard onto Microsoft Teams and take you around a demo. But let me first understand what's your level on the platform. Okay, once I got that indication as to, okay, 60% of you are using Microsoft Teams, 40% of you are not, maybe using another platform. I'm not here to change your platform. I'm rather here to give you a demonstration of what Microsoft Teams has to offer. Okay, so let me just check up once again here. Okay, so Henry, I see you also saying yes. Okay, so yes, 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 yes. Lots of Microsoft Teams. Happy to see it. Zuki, not sure why you have a no. Maybe using another platform, right? But what I want to, yes, how do you upload attendance register and multiple choice questions? Good. These are questions that I want to hear because while you have me for this 1 hour, you rather make the best of it, right? But I'm going to share with you two very important points because I see a lot of you are active on Microsoft Teams. So let's correlate, right? I'm closing up on that presentation and I see that you as interactive as possible. So I'm closing up on the presentation. Now that you have an idea what hybrid or rather the hybrid model is, how do we use it? How are we effective with Microsoft Teams? So if you're wondering, and Zuki, if you're one of them who are unsure whether your institute is eligible to have a Microsoft Teams license, it's simple. If you're part of a government school that falls under a province, then yes, okay, your school is eligible to have Microsoft Teams. You probably already have the license assigned to your school, so you're able to go in and access it. If you're a private institute, we got to find out for you. And my contact details were on the slide. I'll share it again at the end of the session if you need assistance with that. But let me just take you from the basics. I see a lot of us are active on Microsoft Teams already. I can tell there's about 24 of us, 23 of us in the session today. But getting some good indication as to who has Teams and who doesn't. So yes, I only use it as co-facilitator. Good stuff. Okay, so let me take you through what we call a demo. So I'm stopping with my presentation and I'm going into a browser and opening up a URL called www.office.com. You might already have the application downloaded. You might not use it in a browser. Um, so for today's example, not to cause any confusion, but my personal accounts and my personal Microsoft account, I have it as an app. So I'm using my demo account in the browser. And that should tell you something already, right? For your students, they're able to go and use their sister's device or mom or dad's device in order to consume content. So you can use this on multiple platforms, number one. Number two, you can download the application on mobile as well. Okay, so you're always kept in the loop. If you click on Office 365, right, or if you go to Office 365, we refer to this as a dashboard. Okay, Office 365 dashboard. You'll be greeted with your alias on the side, which is usually your name and surname, the first alphabet of your name and surname, your initial, right? For today, I'm system administrator because it's a demo account. But nevertheless, what I want to show you on Office 365, don't hold me to this. Yours might look a little bit different depending on license, right? But you have access to multiple applications. And personally, prior to using Office 365, I'd identify my usual suspects, which is, Excel, PowerPoint, and Word. And I'm okay with using that. But have I ever had, the courage to go and click on OneDrive or Power Apps or Planner? No, because I really never understood what it does for me. But if I click on Microsoft Teams, I'm able to integrate all of these applications into one place. Now, Microsoft Teams is probably one of the only platforms of which once you start it as an educator, you don't need to leave it in the least bit. I can even read my emails from Teams. Okay, so once I see this screen, okay, Microsoft Teams, I can upload files, I can ping people, I can chat to people, I can create meetings, I can do whatever I need to without leaving the platform, right? So most of us are saying that, we use Microsoft Teams. Uh, just got the habit of going in very quickly. Do you assist in security issues for online assessments? Yes, we do. Okay. Whatever questions you might have, I'll be sharing my email address as well. I can help you, or I can direct you to either Microsoft partner or whoever it might be to get all of this sorted out, right? I'm just happy that you guys are using the platform and enjoying it. Any further questions, I'm happy to take offline if we run short of time. What I want to get into is if you're using Teams, you already know the platform. And for some of us, we know Microsoft Teams to be a meeting conference platform. Okay. But when it comes to education, absolutely different. Okay. Even on an enterprise level, absolutely different. Okay. Than just a video conferencing platform. We have activity, measures our feed. I'm not going to go through everything in detail, but what I want to show you in specific is the core parts of Microsoft Teams, which is Teams. Okay. You'd find that I have multiple teams here that I've built because I often test, right? So I have multiple teams. And what is a team? Okay. So a team is your actual classroom, and this is your virtual classroom. So when you're setting up a hybrid model, and regardless of whether your students are at home on a rotational basis or full time, this is a perfect spot to come in and create a team. Okay, and I'm going to show you that today. Create a team. You have four options when it comes to creating a team. So whether you're an educator that educates on a specific subject, whether you are a faculty member or staff member of the school, whether you're a sports teacher, a librarian, no matter who it is inside of an educational institute, you'll have a specific reason why you want to create a team. Okay. And here's the difference. When you click on class, you're basically telling Microsoft Teams that, my intention is to create a virtual or an online classroom experience that an educator would be managing this class with a bunch of students. Okay, so whether my students are 20 or 30 or 5 or 6. The fact of the matter is, I'm going to be teaching and my students are going to be learning inside of this class. So Microsoft Teams, please equip me with all of the tools and applications that I need in order to enhance this teaching and learning process for me. So Microsoft Teams goes and actually builds, it adds in your class notebook. Okay. It adds in your assignments tab. It adds in all of these applications that you'd use in a normal classroom environment. Uh, in addition, or rather, it will take this on a virtual experience for you. PLCs, whether you're a geography HOD or geography teacher that wants to, engage and be part of the geography subject team of South Africa, and learn best practice from other schools or even overseas or so forth. There's a PLC that you can create, okay? Staff team. Now, I'll give you an example of a staff team. Whether it's staff admin, whether it's uploading and scheduling of timetables, it can be done here, right? Because Microsoft Teams goes and puts in a staff notebook for you. So to take down notes, perhaps minutes, okay, recordings of those meetings, very easy to share amongst the rest of the staff members as well. In fact, I dealt with a school who has a staff team for security. Okay, actually, it's not a school; it's a university, and they keep in daily contact from a security point of view. Every single security is logged on Microsoft Teams, right? So you you can understand there's literally everybody in your environment who will make use of a specific team. Anything that you don't see from these three, or if it's not fit for purpose for you, you go and select other. And other could be after school activities, librarian, hiring of the school hall, sports, whatever it might be that fits neither of these. Um, but I want to get into a ready-made team now that you know how to make it, and just explore it a little bit further. Okay, I want to go to a team that actually has some content just to show you. So I'm always selecting algebra. I think it's because of my past with school. Not doing so well with maths. Now's my time to get back, right? But nevertheless, if I had this tool in school, I would have probably been able to do much better. So what we have inside of a team is a general tab, and we have not a general tab, a general channel, and multiple channels that fall beneath it. The channels are there basically just for you to structure communication with students. Now, what happens if in algebra I have 15 students that are inside of my class, additional 5 students, but these 5 students are um, they've fallen behind either because of data issues or accessibility, or maybe the whole transition to online learning, they weren't able to adapt in time. So what I can do in addition is, I can go and set remedial work. I can go and provide extra assistance for the students by selecting another channel. And I'll show you how I do that, right? I create another channel. Sorry, I went to member. I'll create another channel. And that channel I'll be able to call, maths revision. Now, students can be a little bit sensitive at times. So if you want to block this channel out to only the specific 5 students that you choose, then you'd go and select the privacy to private. And it says accessible to only a specific group of people. Who are those group of people? As an educator, I can go and select, whether it's Alex, whether it's whoever it might be. I'll go and select the students' names, and I create that maths revision. So the rest of the 15 students would not be able to pop in and look at the content. And what is the content? Everything that's stored inside of my files. Okay. Remember, class materials, whatever it might be, that might be stored inside here, you can set as an educator to read only. Okay. So students can read the file, but they won't be able to edit it. They won't be able to print it, copy or paste, or anything of that sort. So as an educator, you can go in and protect those files, set a limit on the files and so forth. I just quickly want to pop in again and see if there's any questions. Do you create teams using names or email address or cell phone numbers? Sitele Prince. This is a very valid question. How do you create a team, or how do you create a team and invite students to them, right? Do you use the names or email addresses or cell phone numbers? In this case, and I'm going to take some time on this question, right? Sitele Prince, a very valid question. We go and we work with what we call a Teams admin. The Teams admin will pull out all of the students, and you might already have this at school. All of the students in grade 7, all of the students in grade 7A taking maths and so forth, and you'll be assigned to your class. So if a student uses the organization email, it means that that student is registered as a member, okay, as a member of the team, meaning the student cannot extend that class, that virtual class, to a student in another school. They cannot give access to your IP or your important files to a student everything is in a secured environment. So how do you create a team and add the students? You have a list of what we call a CSV file. This could be pulled from SA SAMS. This could already be on your system, right? All you do is select a group, grade 7A. All of your grade 7A students will be loaded to your team. So very secure environment. And the way, or rather why we do that, is to ensure that your school is secured from all aspects, all breaches of any sort of information being taken without your knowledge. Everything is secured when it comes to the platform itself. So I hope that answers your question, Sitele Prince. PLC, do you have work overage monitoring tools that I can upload in Microsoft Teams? Yeah, we do have a lot of monitoring tools, which I'll show you as well. Can this be also used to assist adaptation to the use of the tool? That's to the use of the platform. Okay, I'll get into that. How do you set limits on files? That's an interesting question. Suan, I think you wanna, if you wanna just elaborate on that while I get into this, right? How do you set limits on files? So by default, and this is default, every single student and educator has the capacity to upload a file or share a file of the limits of 1 terabyte, which is just over 1,000 gigabytes. And it's a lot of data. Trust me, I've been with Microsoft just about 3 years now. Uh, on my work accounts, I haven't even reached 50% capacity just yet, right? So it's a lot of data. And the intention of giving 1 terabyte of data to students is for them to backtrack their journey. And if I imagine myself, completing from grade 1 or grade R to grade 7 and coming to grade 7 and being able to see, my first equation in maths in grade 1 or my first drawing is phenomenal. So that sort of intention was given to a 1 terabyte storage. So it's a lot of storage. You can upgrade that storage if need be. You'll have to check whether you're eligible for that. But for educators, it's usually a jump from 1 terabyte to 5 terabytes. Okay, so everything that gets stored here, and when we talk about everything, any file, any video can get stored here as well, right? So any sort of content you can upload. You can upload directly from your local drive, or you can go in and you can literally just swipe it in from your files. Okay, so I'll give you an example. I can go into files. Okay, I can go into documents, and I can go into increase your productivity as a PDF, and I can copy it into here, right? So any file at all, I'm able to go in and upload. See, the file was literally uploaded in seconds. So just put yourself in an email format, or in a stage where you'd be sending an email. You got to go select the recipients or multiple class members, attach a heavy file. They probably kick back because the file is too big and so forth. Here, in a matter of seconds, it's available for you to go in and upload. So When it comes to restriction, it's important. Okay. Restriction is important, and that's why we can tap directly into Microsoft SharePoint when it comes to restriction. And what do I mean by restriction? Now, sometimes there's very important, and this is more on an HR side or compliance, privacy session that I usually do, but just to show you that this is available. If I click the ellipse inside of my files and I go to open with SharePoint, okay, in SharePoint, the exact same file will open, but further to that, I'd have a little bit more options. I can automate or power automate it. Okay. I can manage the access of that file, which means, and I'm going to ask you a question. How many times have you sent the wrong file in an email to the wrong person? Okay. Once that email is sent, it's sent. Okay. There's no way coming back up until you tell the person, apologies, I've sent the wrong email. So here's an opportunity, especially when you're working on a confidential file. You can go in and pop that file into a specific person's chat, a team if you want, a group chat if you want, but you're able to go in and take away access. Okay, so at the moment, I'm not sharing it with anyone because no one's in my team, but I can take away access from the person. So Algebra visitors, they can view. I can totally stop sharing it with all of the visitors to my team. Right? Because it's sensitive information, I can take that away. So when it comes to file storage and file sharing, it's important to know that these options are available for you to manipulate and use. But I think a lot of questions came around, the management of the team as well. So from an educator point of view, and just moving a little bit away from, student experience, from an educator point of view, if I click on my three dots and I go to manage team, I see that I have members and guests. What are members and guests? Remember, I said members are students, and just say, for example, the school that I'm a teacher at is I'm stumped for names. Okay, but let's say the school that I'm a teacher of is Sasol, right? And so Mohammed's a mathematics educator at Sasol. But what I'm able to do is all of the students with a Sasol email address validates that they are a student in my organization because of their domain. Whoever doesn't have a Sasol email will pop up as a guest. And why do we still allow a guest? Because what if a student's device crashed for that day? Or what if the students had load shedding, but they have an important session and went over to their aunt's house and they're using their aunt's email address? The student can request, Mr. Mohammed, I have to log in to complete my assignment or test or join my class today. I'm using, Aunt Martha's account. So I know that, Martha's a guest here, but the information is sensitive. So Martha will be basically only able to view my session and not pull out any specific files. So that's how we protect our data. That's how we protect our sessions and so forth. So as an educator, you can go in and add a member. Okay. You can search for students. You can add them in addition to your class. So maybe it's a student from another class that wants to join you for a session. You can add them for a specific period of time. You can also co-teach or co-facilitate on a session by adding in another educator. So say, we ill or we're on leave, but class is carrying on. It's probably going in holiday period. You had to play catch up. You got 3 sessions, but you're unable to make it. You can invite another educator to take over for you. Okay. Not anybody can join your team. If they perhaps get a hold of the link for your team, they will come into this part of it, which is pending request. Then you verify that, student Stuart is perhaps a new student to your class. You can accept his request. Comes to channels, you can also, give the student the ability, and this is where I'm going into settings. You can really set the management and pace of your class here. Member permissions. Okay, you're able to go in and say, are members, and remember, members are students, are members allowed to delete and restore channels? No, I don't want them to be able to delete or restore a channel because it might be important work. So no, right? Are members allowed to upload custom apps? Students will be students. By nature, they're explorers, okay? If you have a big red button that says do not click, they're bound to click to see what happens, which is sometimes a good thing, sometimes a bad thing, right? But to avoid that happening and avoid your entire, team and curriculum getting deleted, we set specific measures in place. So this is where you're able to come, right? Give members the option to delete their messages. And this is not each other's messages. It's typing in error, if they send, what do we study for Afrikaans today in your maths team? We give them the ability to delete their own message and correct it. So give members the option to edit their messages. They can edit, they can change, and so forth. Guest permissions is very important, right? Because a guest is someone who's not identified by their domain. So maybe it's Mohamed joining with his personal email, Sahib at outlook.com. He's not part of Contasol. So no, I'm not getting involved in that. I let him join my session, but I won't let him have access to everything. So always be careful on the guest permissions. One important thing that might correlate to one of the questions is analytics. As an educator, don't I want to know how effective or efficient I am when it comes to remote teaching and learning, since we're all new to it, right? Some of us might not be brand new, but most of us are moving on to just over a year anniversary of remote teaching and learning, if we are. But we want to know, compared to a classroom setup, how are we doing on an online environment? And this analytics is great. Why? Because it gives you an indication as, if you had 30 users in your class, you had 9 apps, how many meetings did you have from 7 days ago till now? I could have had 16 meetings. That's 4, 8, 12, 16, 4 meetings a week for the month. Okay, how much of data did I consume? Is it, enough data for my students to download and so forth? I can measure that. But engagement is important. How many posts? Okay, what did I post up? How many students actually replied or mentioned each another or mentioned the work? How many reactions did I get out of it? So at the moment, these zeros show that, Mohammed hasn't been interactive or engaging in the least. But what can I do to be more engaging? I can go in and add in a Microsoft form. I can add in tools of engagement, Kahoots. I can add in lots and lots of different engagements. Applications to make sure that students are starting to engage a little bit further. I see I have 2 more minutes, but there's probably just one or two more things that I wanted to discuss. I'm not going to have enough time to cover it, but nevertheless, I hope we had the opportunity to understand the hybrid model a little bit further. Now, if you're a little bit more interested, I really want to share something with you. And it's something made by educators for educators. You might already have access to it. You might be using it, but take it from me. I use this on a daily basis in order to keep myself updated. I love earning more badges. It does count for SACE, CPD as well. So it's education.microsoft.com. And I'm going to pop it in the chat for you, right? Question of network challenges. Yeah. Okay. All educators need to have access to computers at school. No sharing in order to practice. Okay. How do you provide feedback to learners? So there's lots of questions, right? How do you set limits on files to prevent accessibility? This program needs someone who is computer literate. What about educators? Thank you. And this is what I want to do, right? If you're not computer literate or you're not ready to embrace a full-on platform, right? Then I'm going to be showing you a platform today to get yourself upskilled for free as an educator. So, and is one able to kick out an uninvited guest as an educator? You're able to remove people from your team or from your chat. You are able to do that. How do you provide feedback to learners? You can provide feedback by multiple ways: class notebook, individual feedback. You can provide feedback via Microsoft form as well. I'm happy to discuss all of this offline with you and your school. In fact, all educators need to have access to computers at school, no sharing in order to practice using these platforms, and Wi-Fi too. Wi-Fi is data, of course. It's data dependent. Question of network challenges in deep rural areas. So as an educator, if you have internet at school, we can make it easy for students. And I'm happy to explore that learning with you. I've managed to be part of a team which implemented something that works pretty well during the lockdown, especially. But we're running short of time. I want to show you, in order to upskill yourself, okay, education.microsoft.com. Guys, all you got to know, or all you have to do here is sign in. Okay. If you haven't registered, it's going to ask you for your email address and your password. You can just register and you'll have access to this. Okay. I'm going to log in because I'm already registered. And I want to show you a little bit about this platform just for 2 minutes more of your time. It's called the Microsoft Educator Center. Whatever I discussed with you today, you'd find here. Hybrid learning, a new model for the future of learning. Today's topic, perhaps, right? Getting started with Office 365 and Windows, okay? Accessibility, inclusivity. You can come in and, although it says 4 hours, the course is absolutely free. You'll get a certification that says you're competent. You'll get a badge that you can attach to your signature as well, okay? You can start and stop. So even if you want to do it 10 minutes a day, you get multiple badges. We have learning parts, which is a full course, and we have a single course, which is just a module. So this would be your starting point. Before you reach out to me with a few questions here and there, please take a look at the education.microsoft.com website. I'll be happy to assist. I've sent my email address. I'm happy to assist you moving forward with whatever questions you might have, or challenges, or best practice that you want to share. Give me a shout. I'm happy to assist. But thank you very much, and I hope this was insightful. I hope you managed to take away at least a few things that you didn't know before. But I thank you once again, and I hope we meet again soon. Thanks.